Welcome everybody, welcome all our Torah Anytime viewers. We are learning tonight, this is the 11th part of our series on Mashiach. Even though this technically could be like in sort of its own section. Last week we did, well it was 2 weeks ago, we did on the fake Mashiach of JC, and we proved how that's, 100% not true. And today we're going to go a little bit on a different route, but on the same, on the same path. And that is the infamous false Mashiach, Shabbatai Tzvi. So, out of all the the fake Mashiachs that existed over time, and there were many of them, this was one of the most popular one. And this, I would say, it was even more popular than JC, than Jesus, because in regards to Jesus, he was more of a to the Gentile world. But Shabbatai Tzvi actually captured the Jewish world, and he captured a majority of it. So what we're going to discuss tonight is, number one, how did he do that? How was he able to fool so many people into believing that he was the Mashiach? One of the purposes of this class is also to understand, by looking at what he did, you could also sort of try to understand what the real Mashiach is supposed to do. Sort of balance it out from looking at studying the negative and then figuring out the positive. So this Shabbatai Tzvi, he lived in Izmir, Turkey, from the year 1626 to 1676. He lived 50 years, and since the beginning there were a few people, rabbis, that openly said that he's a false Messiah. Don't listen to him. But there was a majority of the people, I'm talking about the regular people that follow him, and there was also a percentage of the rabbis that also thought that he was the Mashiach. So he not only convinced the regular people, which is more easier to convince, but he convinced the learned people as well. Not all of them, but he was able to convince them. So let's speak a little bit about who he was. Where does he come from? So his father was Mordechai Tzvi. He came from an Ashkenazi origin. And at first he was a poultry merchant. So he used to sell, all those different types of meats of, chicken or whatever it was. And eventually he became a agent for the Dutch and English traders. And when the market, rose over there, when the economic rise, he became extremely wealthy. So he became wealthy, and Shabbatai Tzvi also had two other brothers that also became very wealthy. His brothers' names was Eliyahu and Yosef. They both became wealthy merchants. They say Shabbatai Tzvi was born on Shabbat, hence his name is Shabbatai, from Shabbat, and that's where he got his name Shabbat. His followers also claim that he was born on the 9th of Av. When he was born on the 9th of Av, why did they say that? Because there's a tradition that the Mashiach will be born on the 9th of Av. So and out of all of the people that opposed him, not one person ever said that he's an ignoramus. He was a very well-learned individual. He knew a lot about not only the Torah, he knew a lot about Kabbalah. He actually delved a lot into Kabbalah, which is where partially he fell off. According to one source that we have, he left yeshiva at the age of 15. Why did he leave? Because he felt that nobody could teach him anymore. He was on such a high level, he was so advanced in his studies that nobody there was able to teach him anymore. At the age of 18, he was ordained a rabbi already. His rabbi was Rabbi Yosef Iskaba, which we'll soon see later ended up putting him in cherem, which means he excommunicated him by the things that he did. But Shabbatai Tzvi in himself, he was more of a loner type of person. He was always by himself, didn't have any much friends. He was a very good singer, he was very charismatic, and he was also good looking. So those attributed a lot to the fact of that it sort of convince people more. And there's certain people that you sort of expect to claim that there will be a fake Mashiach. They'll be like, okay, this guy goes and says, by the way, I'm, Mashiach, and you want to see my spaceship outside? That sort of lines in the same sentence, you don't really blink twice. But when you have someone who is well versed in the Torah, who's a big Talmid Chacham, he knew a lot of the Kabbalah, of the Gemara, of the Zohar, he knew a lot about all these things, and that person tells you that he's Mashiach, it makes you like, okay, you're sort of always on the defense, but it's sort of bringing it more into it. On the top of that he was very charismatic. He was a good-looking person. He wasn't like a disheveled person. He was, knew how to sing very well. So it sort of made you lose your guard. And this is in a way that he was able to get a lot of followers as well. So when he started learning Kabbalah, this is where he found his calling. When he started learning Kabbalah. And he led a lifestyle that ran away from anything materialistic pleasure. So he would fast for days on end. He would go and put himself in solitude for days as well also, and meditating and putting all the Kabbalot aspects into reality. From what we read about Shabbatai Tzvi, you could understand that he had some sort of condition, and nowadays we will call that condition bipolar or manic depressive. The reason for that is throughout his history, when it's documented, he has periods of manic, which is he has extreme euphoria, a lot of energy, non-stop, and he would be able to go like for days on end without sleeping. And not only that, he would be able to give a class, let's say a shiur Torah, and it will be on very complex topics for non-stop, for hours on end. So you get like, where does this guy get his energy from? How does this, he had like a supernatural, energy with it. And then came the Manic episode. The Manic episode, I'm sorry, the depression episodes, which he would, sort of be sulky and be by himself and, keep to himself. So he had these like different bouts of energy that would come out. Now, when he had these Manic episodes, which means he was very hyperactive, he would do something called strange acts. We'll soon see Ma'asim Zarim. It will be like something that they classified it. And of these things were like he publicly violated kashrut, publicly violated Shabbat laws. So, which even though, still with all this, he was still able to get followers, which is unbelievable, and we're going to see how that happened. So, between the years 1646 and 1650, he married his first wife. The marriage didn't last long. One of the reasons probably the only reasons was that his father-in-law came over to him or to Beit Din and said, listen, he's the husband, Shabbatai Tzvi, he never touches his wife. He never comes close to his wife. And it turns out that he never consummated the marriage. So that ended up in a divorce. A short while after that, he married a second wife. And not surprisingly, the same thing happened. The father-in-law comes in and says he never consummated the marriage, and that ended also with a divorce. Now, the year was 1648. So it was a very unfortunate time for the Jewish people. The 1648, 1649, it was a tach. It was known in the Jewish world. It was known also as the Chmielnicki pogroms. This was orchestrated by a person by the name of Bohdan Chmielnicki. And what happened was, just a little background of what this massacre, the pogroms, the uprising of this was that during those years, the Polish people ruled over the Ukrainian people in the nearby areas. And every time that they would, so they would obviously have their taxes, pay tolls, all those things. And they would, at times, raise the taxes and tolls. Who would be the middleman between these two, I guess you could say, nations or countries? The Jewish people. The Jewish people were the tax collectors, were the administrators of the land, of the in-between. Now, the Ukrainians felt that they are being, abused, and so much so that they went on the uprising and they completely wanted to take over the Ukrainian rule. So what happened was that who did they put most of their energy and frustration at? Was the middleman, the Jews. I mean, they took care of a lot of other people, but they took care. And during this time, there was hundreds of thousands of Jews that died and lost their lives during this period. So every time after a tremendous destruction, there's always a time when they're like, you're like, why did God do this towards his people? Like, if God loves his people, how could he do this to them? So people generally, after these types of situations, what do they look for? They look for Mashiach. And this is what happened after the Holocaust. You hear like Holocaust survivors when they say when they found out that the Americans liberated the people in the Holocaust, wherever they were, the concentration camps, the labor camps, they were very upset. Why were they upset? Because they were for sure waiting for Mashiach to come. They were like, for sure Mashiach is going to come. And what? It's just the Americans? It's just the people that are liberating us? So there's always a time when bad things happen, we look towards Mashiach. We look towards the wanting and the need to Mashiach, and rightfully so. So the same thing happened over here. After this massacres of Tach, the Jews were looking towards Mashiach. They needed a Mashiach. And Shabbatai Tzvi also started thinking about it. It says, how could God do this to his chosen nation? Kill hundreds of thousands of people, innocent people in cold blood? So he said there must be Mashiach around the corner. And very soon he decided that he was the Mashiach that he's going to become, and he's going to save the Jewish people, the Jewish nation. So at roughly the age of 22, he started declaring that he is the true Mashiach, he's the savior of the Jewish people. And to prove this claim, he would do things that would only happen well after Mashiach comes. For example, that he started pronouncing God's name the way that it's written, not the way that it's supposed to be pronounced. And you're obviously not allowed to do that. There was, so his rabbi started seeing his actually personal rabbi who, ordained him, if I'm not mistaken, saw this and he was like, how could this be? And he went and he excommunicated him. He put him in cherem. He said, there's something off, and he excommunicated him. That, you would think that would stop him. If your own rabbi went and tell you you're doing something wrong, stop it. He doesn't listen. Eventually he goes and he excommunicates you and say, okay, fine, listen, maybe I was wrong. But it didn't. He kept on going, and his strange acts, or maasim zarim, kept on happening. The reason also why he happened to get a lot of followers is because people, he allowed to sin. If people wanted to sin, he said, no problem, now it's a tikkun. It's sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not when you justify something, but the same idea. When you're able to say, you know what, I'm allowed to do this because, it's a good thing. So he convinced, what? Not to repair, that's more like the tikkun, but more like to make yourself feel better about doing something bad. Everybody does it. We all do it, depending on the level. There are some people, I know people, unfortunately, that they, don't keep Shabbat. Why? Because, listen, Shalom Bayit, Rabbi. Everything is more important than Shalom Bayit. No kashrut, Shalom Bayit. People, let's say that are dating and they're not Shomel Nigiyah. They touch opposite, gender. Why? Listen, otherwise she's going to get upset. He's going to get upset. This and that. So they convince themselves that it's a right thing. Meanwhile, it's 100% wrong. It's a justification. They justify it. So the same thing over here. People wanted to sin. Shabtai was able to justify it. Don't worry, you're allowed to do that. It's a tikkun. Not only is it not an averah, not a sin, rather you're doing a big mitzvah. You're making tikkunim. So he, and he did it himself many things that were very, very strange. For example, he was in yichud. He was in seclusion with unmarried women. He was also, his followers would actually pride themselves on forbidden relations, claiming that this is a tikkun for this and this is a tikkun for that. Other things that he would do is he would go into the ocean in the middle of the night, and he would go swimming. But he would have a minyan stay there and watch him. For whatever reason that he thought that this was a tikkun, he had them watch him. He one time thought he flew. He actually thought he flew and levitated into the air. And when he came, I guess, down, or he goes over to his people that was there. He's like, "Did you see me fly?" So they said, "No." He says, "You know what? It's because you're not worthy. You're not purified enough. That's why you couldn't see me fly." So he started doing, a lot of these odd things. And one time, when he was swimming, he almost drowned, and he felt that through a miracle he was saved. And because of that, he ordained that day to be like a holiday, like Purim. And that day was the 16th of Kislev. And a lot of his followers, not only that, they fasted like Purim a day beforehand, like Tanit Esther, and then they made a feast on the day that he was saved, which is the 16th of Kislev. So obviously, this led to a lot more rabbis intervening, seeing what he's doing, and they started excommunicating him. And after that didn't work, they actually banished him. They kicked him out. They kicked him out from the, from the town that he was. So, if you think that would stop the strange acts from continuing, it didn't. It kept on going. In fact, one of the odd things that he did is he got married, but he didn't get married to a person. He got married to the Torah like everything, like the whole shebang. He got married to the Torah. Which is later, when he signs his name, he used to sign the name Chatan Torah. Literally, because he felt he was the Chatan of the Torah. He literally felt like he married the Torah. So, after that also, he kept on getting kicked out from city to city. And not only that, he kept on getting excommunicated and getting kicked out. But with all this, he still was getting followers. People are still coming to him, and they were still following him. He went on, even at one point, time lost all meaning. He celebrated Sukkot, Pesach and Shavuot all in 1 week. He's like, yalla, let's do a combino over here, let's do everything together, knock it out for the year. It's like, imagine, literally think about it, be like, listen, I'm going to keep Shabbat for 7 days, so I'm going to be good for like another 7 weeks. That's the way that he was, that he was doing it. Now, what makes it even more interesting is that when he started permitting things that are forbidden, he actually created a blessing for it. The blessing was, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, matir isurim. Matir is that permits isurim, things that are forbidden. So now he made a new blessing that when you're doing something that was once forbidden by the Torah, sort of created a new Torah. So now it's permitted. Now it's mutar. Now it's permitted. So and as he went, it's interesting because as he went from place to place, and not every place was like this, because he did quite a little bit of traveling. When he first entered a place, he was more quiet. And this is not across the board, but he was more quiet, more in that depression state. And this way, he got a lot of followers as well, because people saw him. He knew a lot of Torah. He knew a lot of Kabbalah. He's sitting there learning day and night, non-stop. He's keeping time by himself. He's doing all the yichudim, whatever that it is that he's doing. So he got people to follow him. But then, eventually, when he started acting all the crazy stuff, people already, dug in, and they were, not overlooked it, so to speak, or gave reasons why it's okay. So there was a very wealthy man by the name of Rafal Yosef Halabi. That he was under the Ottoman government. He, besides being very wealthy, he was also very influential in the government, and he was, a very, very big, giver of charity. He would, at regular, besides supporting Talmidei Chachamim, Kabbalists, Talmudists, he supported all these people. Besides that, on a regular basis, on a daily basis, better yet, he had about 50 of these Talmidei Chachamim dining at his table. On a daily basis, not on a weekly thing. So he was very wealthy, gave a lot of tzedakah. Also, he did a lot of fasting himself. He did to abstain from all the, from what you regular hear the wealthy people do. So someone who's considered on like a righteous level. Shabbatai Tzvi befriended him, and when he befriended him, he was Shabbatai Tzvi was a very charismatic person, and so this Rafal Yosef Halabi, he actually became a supporter of Shabbatai Tzvi, and that also just boosted him up a lot because he was a very influential Jew, and now he got his support. So at about 1663, Shabbatai Tzvi moved to Jerusalem. And then again, he would continue his regular things. He was learning all day and all night, keeping by himself. He was also a very great singer. So he went down in front of the Amud. A lot of people came and listened to him. What's interesting that besides he would literally sing Tehillim all night, and a beautiful voice, so captured a lot of people. He also happened to like Spanish love songs, not Jewish things, and he would sing them, and he would give deep mystical meanings to those love songs. So talk about rationalizing. So. And besides gaining people that way, he wasn't like a mean guy. He was very nice. He gave candies to the children, and so everybody liked him. He was very likable. And one time the community in Eretz Yisrael in Yerushalayim, they needed money because the government that was ruling over them imposed heavy taxes, like everyone usually does in the Jewish people. So they didn't have the money to raise it. So they went over to him and they said, "Listen, can you go and raise money for us? We know that you have a connection with this Halabi, this very wealthy Jew." I believe he was in Cairo. Can you go and raise money for him? So he said, fine, let me try it. And he goes and he takes on the mission, and he goes and he travels to Cairo. On the way, he stops by Hebron, and over there he starts davening by the Avot. And he's davening with such zeal, and he has there's a group of people that were over there, and he stayed up with them all night, and they were discussing and learning and praying and doing all these things that he just convinced them also to follow him. He was like picking up followers like flies. So as he went, when he got to Cairo, he spoke to Halabi, and he got all the funds. Everything that they needed, he got. Which, needless to say, when he gets back to to Jerusalem, his thing just went up to the roof. Now this guy basically just saved the place from who knows what. So his rating goes up, and people start following him even more. Now he was aware that he's doing things that are against the Torah, and it bothered him. So he heard about somebody from a place called Gaza. Now we look at Gaza as something that's only the Arabs have it, but actually Gaza was at this point in time was a very populated Jewish community. So he heard about this guy, Nathan from Gaza, we'll call him. Well, that was his name. That's what we're calling him that. But so he was known as like a very person that was able to look inside, a big Kabbalist. So he decided that he's going to go visit him to see if he could figure out what's going on inside him. Why is he compelled to do these things? Why is he has these bouts of depression and all these different things that were going on inside him? He wants to know what's going on. So out of all the people to go, he went to the worst person that he could go to. And this is Nathan of Gaza. We'll soon see why. So when he comes to Nathan of Gaza, this Nathan sees him and he says, something wrong, you need to repair? What are you talking about? You don't need to repair anything. You're the king, you're the Mashiach. He says, what do you need to repair? Everything that you're doing. And he went and he started convincing him that everything that he was doing was really a tikkun for this and that. He was basically giving him everything that he needed to continue his Mashiach drive. So Shabbatai Tzvi he initially didn't really, he was like, okay, that sounds a little bit too much. He didn't accept it. But they both needed to travel, so they traveled together. And when they traveled together, so they befriended each other and they were talking, Shabbatai Tzvi started opening up to him everything that happened to him in his life. And this Nathan of Gaza went and he started convincing and showing him, bringing him proofs from Kabbalah, from all the deep sources, how everything that he did was really good. And everything that is happening is really a tikkunim, and he basically convinced him, you are right where you're going, continue what you're doing, you are the Mashiach. Now, if he was unsure beforehand, now forget about it. And now think about what it has. You have one, famed Kabbalist who heals people, which we're soon going to speak about. And you have Shabbatai Tzvi, who is also a charismatic guy. Two people coming together saying that he's Mashiach. And he has this, wealth of followers. You start to believe it. And it starts to get out there. So let's explain a little bit who this Nathan of Gaza was. This Nathan was, he was considered a real prodigy. When he was young, he would, in yeshiva still, before he was married, he would spend day and nights learning Torah non-stop. And he was one of those people that was able to concentrate for very long periods of time, have a strong focus, a big drive. So he would accomplish tremendous amounts of learning. One day, a very wealthy Jew from Gaza goes over to the Bet Midrash, to the yeshiva, and he goes over to the rabbi and says, listen, I'm a very wealthy person, and I want the best boy in the yeshiva. So the rabbi says, no questions asked, this guy Nathan of Gaza. This is the guy Nathan, who wasn't of Gaza yet, he was just Nathan. This guy, he's the best boy. So he says, fine. He goes over, they call him over, and says, listen, would you agree to marry my daughter? Continue learning, one condition, you have to come to Gaza where I live, and then I will support you for the rest of your life, you can focus nonstop. This is every yeshiva bacher's dream, right? He says, what is there? Of course, I can sit and learn all day, I don't have to worry about learning. Where do I sign? So they made a shidduch, and he got married. And when this Nathan of Gaza, I believe at the age of 20, he started going into Kabbalah. And to tell you the level from history, this is how we have it, that within 2 years he mastered the Zohar, he mastered the writings of Moshe Kodavel and the Arizal within 2 years, unfathomable. And so he covered a tremendous amount of ground. Now, he was also a very charismatic person. He had very good interpersonal skills, as well as he had this charm. And people felt that he could read them. People and he would people would come to him and he would tell them things about what they did and what they're supposed to be, and he would go and give them tikkunim. He says, this is what you need to do, and this is how you need to do tshuva. So he would, he got his name out there as a very famed, I don't know if you want to call him healer, but basically somebody with powers. Let's just call it like that. Even this Afal Yosef Halabi that we spoke about before heard about him, and he said, listen, he sent some rabbi, says, check this guy out, this young Kabbalist, he's causing a lot of commotion over here. Is this guy legit? And they sent some rabbis, the rabbis examined him. These rabbis were so impressed with it that they joined him, whatever, in his place that he was, that's how captivating he was. So these two teamed up. You have Nathan of Gaza and Shabbatai Tzvi, they both teamed up together that he was going to be the Mashiach. And in fact, Nathan of Gaza later commented and he said that he was Eliyahu Hanavi, and this guy Shabbatai Tzvi was the Mashiach. And that's how they continued to I guess spread the word. The Shabbatai Tzvi went on, and he would start walking in fields, and he would point to a rock and be like, there's this, tzaddik, there's a grave of a tzaddik over here. And he said to a tzaddik, let's go pray by it. And he'll go to another place and says, there's a tzaddik over here. Similar to what Arizal did. And then he also claimed to be in communication with dead souls as well. So he put himself on a slew of powers. Now, this Nathan of Gaza as well of Shabbatai Tzvi, what did they do? Which also caused a little bit of, if you think about it, they said, Mashiach is here, you guys have to do tshuva. They didn't say, besides the fact that they allowed certain things, but they said they wanted to bring the people to tshuva. Now, I thought about this for myself. Imagine how the rabbis had to deal with this. Because they saw that there's a fake guy, coming here, spreading the word that he's the Mashiach, and he's telling people to do tshuva. What are the rabbis supposed to say? No, stop, don't do tshuva, he's fake. They want them to, everyone needs to do tshuva. We want the whole Klal Yisrael to do tshuva. So he sort of stuck a little bit. But nevertheless, they still went against the this Shabbatai Tzvi. However, he still started getting a support of some rabbis. As you can see, he has two foundation of two well-learned people, and they're spreading it out. The majority of the Jews are starting to get into it. So it was becoming a craze, a movement. A while after that, Shabbatai Tzvi went and he ended up marrying his wife, which is the third wife, and this was someone by the name of Sarah. There's actually a lot of interesting information about her. So she was an orphan. Her parents died in that 1648, the Tachtatai, the massacre that we spoke about earlier. So, but she, grew up with this Polish nobleman, and she had let's just say she had a reputation of a woman of ill repute. Let's just say it like that. So, but she used to always conceive the notion that she was going to marry the Messiah. Like she had this idea already, I don't know when, but she always, as soon as the Mashiach is going to appear, so she's going to get married to him. And so when this type of information got out to Shabbatai Tzvi, said, there's a woman of ill repute who's claiming that she's going to marry the Mashiach. So Shabbatai Tzvi was immediately intrigued. He's like, bring her to me. He says, I had a dream that I'm going to marry such a woman, a woman that's, of ill repute. And he went, and she came over there, and they decided to get married. And they got married in, in Halabi's house, in the wealthy guy's house. And now this not only did not detract from his followers, but it actually increased it, because he had now a beautiful wife and very, eccentric. She was very involved. So it got, it sort of raised the thing. They say more or less for the next year he had a little bit of stability with his manic depression, but he still kept on preaching. The popularity, the way that his fame grew, was not only for the Jewish people. Also, the non-Jews got into this craze. There was actually, all different types of reports that were coming in. In fact, one of the reports, and again, most of this is all made up, was that they said that in the north of Scotland, a ship appeared by sailors who spoke Hebrew, and there was a flag that had the 12 Shvatim inscripted on it. So they thought that, the lost tribes are coming back over here. All of a sudden, things are coming out. So as his fame grew, he even went back, let's say, to Izmir, Turkey, where he got not only did he got excommunicated from that place, he got banished from that place. But when he returned with all this flame and glory, people sort of conveniently forgot that excommunication, forgot the ban, and forgot that he was kicked out. To tell you the extent of it went, there were many synagogues that had Shabbatai Tzvi's initial posted all over the place, and there were prayers for him. Prayers for the Mashiach, the Shabbatai Tzvi. And they had Shabbatai Tzvi's picture printed side by side with him and King David. And they had also all his Kabbalistic, tefillot that he put in as well. Not only that, he also had Christians following him. Why did the Christians want to follow him? Some, they believe also in something called like the millennium, where they think that JC will return, and once JC is going to return, he's going to rule for another 1,000 years. So they thought of this as a way that it will get the people to believe in the Mashiach and somehow go and believe in JC as well. So and in fact, many of the non-Jews actually spread the report, because they're the people that were merchants. So it didn't actually just stay in where he was. It went throughout the entire world. Again, I don't know for the entire world, but it went to a big chunk of the place knew about this. Everybody was talking about the Jewish Messiah. So and letters started describing miracles that he would, he lit huge bonfires and he walked through it and he could fly, and then, all these different types of mystical things that he would be able to do. To the extent that the commerce, the trading, the business slowed down. People already stopped doing business so much. They'll be like, well, what's the point? Mashiach is here. The Mashiach is here. That, that's how when people believe it. When it affects the business, that's when it hits. When it hits a pocket, that's when you realize people believe in it. I'll give you an example. People that are becoming religious, if they make most of their money on Shabbat, that it didn't really hit them. But once they are able to say, okay, I'm stopping to work on Shabbat, that's when that the religion hit home. That they realize the truth of it, they believe it, and they're going to go full force in it. So once they stop, yeah.
Is it bad that they believe?
They believed wrong. Listen, you're supposed to follow the rabbis. You're supposed to follow the main rabbis. They suffered a lot because of that, and we'll soon see. So it's besides that, they had people that not only that being teshuvah, they would go and they would dip daily in the mikveh. People would go to the mikveh. They would go, and even in the cold water, they go to the ocean. It didn't matter. They would start screaming into the streets, "Long live the Messiah! Long live Shabbatai Tzvi!" You're talking about rumors that the 10 tribes were surfacing from all areas: Saudi Arabia, Persia, the Sahara Desert. Like they're coming from like all places. There were people even that sold their houses. They sold. That's how much they sold their property, because they realized that we have to have enough money for the journey to the Holy Land. Even the wealthy believers, the ones that believed in also, they made arrangements to rent ships. And I didn't find the source for this, but I remember reading that trading was, it came to a stop sign because you couldn't use any more of the ships, because they were all being rented out to bring people to Jerusalem. So, even more so, when people would print out books, they would write, this is instead of quoting it from the year, the year of the Jewish, this is the first year from the new Mashiach, similar to how JC did it. So not how he did it, but how it happened. So And this was no difference. Ashkenazi, Sephardi, Italian, everybody fell for this. So people went and people would be fasting. You're talking about not fasting once a day. The people would fast for days on end. Some of them, if they are able to do for almost a week, as much as they possibly do to do the most tshuva that they can. And this is including men, women, and children. It says that the mikveh was so packed that you weren't even able to go inside it. That's how packed it was. So his odd things continued. He would sign letters, we said, like Chatan Torah. He would also sign his letters to Mashiach, and sometimes, very unfortunate, this is what he did. He actually referred to himself as God. He signed his letter, I am the Lord your God, Shabbatai Tzvi. And he wrote the name God like it's written in the Sefer Torah. So obviously this made a lot more rabbis go against him and excommunicate him. Generally, the way that it went was that you had the learned people, the scholarly people, they went what's it called? They went against him. The more unlearned people, they went for him. So the rabbis, they felt a little bit powerless. You have the majority of people falling for him. They are not able to do anything. So they felt sort of stuck between, like, how are they supposed to handle this situation? He would make them go and feed forbidden fats for the Jewish people. So this was the challah, there's certain parts that you're not supposed to eat. He went and he would feed them to them. He says, no, don't worry about it, it's fine. This punishment is karet. He went and said, no, it's okay, you're allowed to eat it. So people, he started getting excommunicated anymore, but now the excommunication, was no match for really what he had. He went and he secluded himself with his first wife that he divorced, that she remarried somebody else. And he also promised women that he would liberate them from the curse of Eve, whatever that means. So he was promising a lot, gaining a lot of followers, and his followers were, dealt with force. If you don't believe in him, it wasn't like, oh, who do you believe in? Oh, no, I believe in him. It was like, if you don't believe in him, action was taken against you. So this caused also the rabbis to start, they weren't able to reject him openly. There were people, they actually got harassed. And it was dangerous to them. There are some rabbis that had to flee. They had to run away because they objected him so much. So you could see how much they delve into it. He came in, besides all his, strange acts, at the same point in time with his beautiful voice, singing. He's singing in the middle of the night, the tikkunim and the kabbalot and all this, the tehillim, non-stop. He sort of like was getting people and then questioning, but then getting people and then he still was doing these weird things. I'll tell you one of the things that he did. If I'm not mistaken, this following story I believe happened on Shabbat as well, which makes everything all that more so. But I'm not 100% sure. I think it was on Shabbat. So one time he was in, he was in the synagogue on Shabbat. They were praying, and suddenly he stopped and he just walks out, like he just broke off. So what do people do? You're a good follower, you follow him. That's what you're supposed to do. Followers follow. So he gets up and he goes to a nearby Portuguese synagogue, and he starts, he knocks on it. It's locked, and he starts, he sees no one's opening up. He takes an axe and he starts smashing on the door, like breaking the door apart. Which is obviously a clearly violation of Shabbat, if this did happen on Shabbat, which I think it did. So eventually, the people were like wondering what was going on. They open the door, and he comes in with all his followers. The rabbi there, which was one of the rabbis that opposed him, got so scared that he, I don't know if he got scared or he ran away, but they actually banished him. They actually kicked him out. And there, Shabbatai Tzvi goes, and he started reading the portion of the Torah. But he didn't read it from the Sefer Torah, from there. He read it from like a printed copy, which is obviously you don't read from a printed copy, you read from the actual scroll. But no, he read it from the printed copy, and then he would call upon any of his followers to read the Torah, and he would make them say the bracha using God's name the way that it's written, not the way that you're supposed to pronounce it, which is obviously a very big violation. And then to top it off, he started handing out kingdoms to all his followers. So you're going to be a Persia, you're going to be the high priest, you're going to be the Turkish kingdom. Everyone was getting stuff. So he continued this ceremony with a furious speech against the unbelieving rabbis, and he compared them to unclean animals. And he went and proclaimed, he said, listen, you need a Mashiach ben Yosef to come before Mashiach ben David. He was claiming that he was Mashiach ben David. So he claimed that a certain person that died in the massacre of Tachvatat in 1648, he was Mashiach ben Yosef, and hence he was here before, and that, that's why it's okay, so let no one convince you otherwise. So then he went up to the Aron HaKodesh, and with a Torah scroll in his arm, and he sang this Spanish love song. non-Jewish love song, again about the emperor's daughter or something like that. And this was known as his favorite song. And he went and he started explaining this is really Kabbalistic and it's really mystical and there's this and that and explaining all these things. And then he proclaimed himself as the anointed of the God of Jacob, the Redeemer of Israel. And then he fixed a date for the redemption. He's like, here's a date. And the date was the 15th of Sivan, the year 5426, or in English it was June 18th, the year 1666. That was the date he said that this is going to happen. This is when the big stuff is happening. So the rabbi who went, there was someone there, I guess, of a scholarly area. I think it was even a rabbi that after Shabbatai he said that he's going to go and he's going to take the crown from the Turkish government. So one of the rabbis says, yeah, and he started basically like questioning it. The Shabbatai got so upset that he sort of like banished him, and all his followers went against this person that went against Shabbatai Tzvi. That eventually this rabbi was so scared. He says, "Okay, fine, I believe." He's like, yeah. And he actually went and he actually became one of those believers. Shabbatai Tzvi went and he decided that you don't need to fast anymore on the 10th of Tevet. He says the fast is done. You don't have to fast anymore. This every time he had like this big thing that he would come out with, he had a lot of people, rabbis that would go against him. This also, again, he had a lot of rabbis that went against him, and he kept on traveling to a different location. The masses that believed in him were so much that they convinced themselves so much that they felt that they had prophecy. And there was about 150 people that said that they prophesied, that they would get into this like trance and they would start like repeating verses from the Torah, something related to the Mashiach, or sometimes something related about Shabbatai Tzvi, or visions that they see about Shabbatai Tzvi. So you had all in all these like men, women, and children all of a sudden claiming to be prophets that he is the Mashiach. So it starts getting convincing even for people that weren't. Even though you look at it now, I'd be like, this is so foolish. But imagine living through that. There would got a lot of people convinced to it. This is why you need to know that one thing that you always need to do is you don't follow the public. You follow the rabbis. Legit rabbis, those are the ones that you need to follow. That is probably one of the most important lessons that you can learn from this. Because you see how fooled people got, how much they fell, and they fell so hard. And you will soon see how bad it was. But meanwhile, they are thinking that the Mashiach is coming. So there's like dancing and partying in the street. There's like dancing and partying, but then there's fasting and tshuva. And then there's dancing and partying, and there's fasting and then tshuva. And all these things that either Shabbatai Tzvi or Nathan from Gaza went and he orchestrated them to do. The Turkish government meanwhile gets this report. There's a commotion that's going around the world that's coming from your area, and they started thinking, okay, what's there's something off with this. Excuse me. Okay, so they So when Shabbatai Tzvi went and whenever he left Izmir and he went to Constantinople, which was Istanbul, now in present day it's Istanbul, the Grand Vizier over there went and he had him arrested. And he put him in prison. Now you would think, okay, this could go like, all right, so now your Mashiach is arrested. That's sort of like, if you have like your what is it called, G.I. Joe? If like you have your, your iron whatever, like the man, if you have your best guy locked up, that sort of be like not so good. But just the opposite. They took it as a positive sign. Says no, this means even better, and it just increased. So there was the dancing and there were prayers for Shabbatai Tzvi. The Grand Vizier over here, though, showed leniency towards Shabbatai Tzvi. He realized that and thank God this didn't happen, because you know what happened if he would have been martyred, if he would have been murdered? There was a new religion that would have sprouted. There was something that would have happened. He said he has too much followers. He says he had to play this very carefully. So he just kept him, locked up. In the beginning, when he kept him locked up, he put him in a very tight, corner, like dungeon, like nothing nice, nothing good. But after a generous amount of greasing and bribing, he got moved to a higher, nicer quarter. They say that the Grand Vizier would have released him if they would have paid a significant amount of a bribe. But Shabbatai Tzvi said, no, leave it. We don't need it. I'll come out when I need to. He says, no need to pay the bribe. So this also increased his reputation. It'll be like, wow, this guy, he was able to get out, but he didn't want to. Oh, that's tzaddik. So it increased his fame as well. And he actually met with people over there. One time he had to be transferred to a different location, and this happened in Erev Pesach. And on Erev Pesach, he went, and I guess somehow, I don't know if it's his transfer, when he got there, when he was there in the previous place, he sacrificed a Kalban Pesach. in Istanbul, in that area, he sacrificed a korban pesach, and he ate it. And not only did he eat it and give it over to other people to eat it, he told the people they're even able to eat the forbidden parts where you're not supposed to eat. He says that everything is, and he said you have to make the bracha, obviously, the one who permits for the forbidden food. So he went and he continued that. And a short while after that, as the fast of the 17th of Tammuz and the fast of 9th and Av came, he says, oh wait, don't worry about it, those guys. You don't have to do it anymore. It's over. No more fasting. So not only that he made the 9th of Av a day of celebration. It was his birthday. Celebrating my birthday, 9th of Av, no more fasting. Just from now on, it's going to be a festival. So there was a Polish scholar, and this meeting, this was like a very famed meeting between Shabbatai Tzvi and this Polish scholar, that no one's really sure exactly what happened. There's a lot of legendary information on what's going on in there, but I'll tell you the gist of it, at least one idea of it. Yeah, please. Thank you. Yeah, that this Polish scholar went over to Shabbatai Tzvi, and they sat together. 3 days they were locked. Thank you. 3 days they were locked inside the room. 3 days they were and you hear arguing nonstop. So much so that they only stopped when they had to fall asleep for a short while. They woke up again, straight back into the arguing, going back and forth. Now they say what the argument was this guy, this Polish scholar says, how could you be Mashiach ben David? I am Mashiach ben Yosef, and I didn't reveal myself. So, and each one was bringing sources from their Kabbalistic works. Says, no, I am, and this, and no, it doesn't have to be like that, and going back and forth. Until finally this Polish scholar gets up and he says, you're a fake, you're a phony, you're a fraud, and I'm done. I'm had it here. You're bringing idolatry, idol worship into this place, and he leaves. He goes straight, yeah.
It's a Jewish story, no?
Yeah. He goes straight to the Grand Vizier, and he says, this Polish scholar, and he says, I want to convert to Islam. So what do they say? Bechabod. Put on the turban and scratch your ears, whatever you do, and go do your join the ship. So as soon as he converts to Islam, he says, there's a guy, Shabbatai Tzvi, and he sort of ratted him out. He said, this guy, Shabbatai Tzvi, is claiming to the Mashiach, he's going to take over the Turkish government, he's rebelling against you. So he says, oh yeah, is he? So, by the way, this is one of the reasons that he went and he converted first, because if he would have snitched to him as a Jew, the Jewish people would have the Mashiach fever was so strong that he would have destroyed him. But now that he was Islam, no one could touch him. So he went, he converted, and he ratted him out to the vizier, and then the vizier went and he brought Shabbatai Tzvi to him, and they put him on trial. And he says, are you claim to the Mashiach? Shabbatai Tzvi denied that he's the Mashiach. Oh, what are you talking about? I don't know anything about this. So the Sultan over there went and he gave him a choice. He says, you have two options. Either you're going to die, or you're going to convert to Islam. And this is what the Mashiach of Israel, this is what the thing that they did. He didn't want to die, and he took the route of converting. And he went, and this alleged Mashiach went and he converted to Islam. He became, from Shabbatai Tzvi, he became Aziz Muhammad or Muhammad Effendi. That was his new name. So the reason why that the Sultan really liked the idea of him having converted, because the Sultan was a deeply religious man. And he would think, if this charismatic Jewish leader goes and he has such a big following, if he converts to Islam, you know how many Islamic people were going to get converting to Islam because of him? He says, unbelievable the amount of the converts that he's going to get. So not only did he convert him, he actually went and he gave him an honorary title called Kapi Bashi, which was called in Islam, the keeper of the palace gates. He was considered a very important convert, and he was giving a payment of 150 gold coins, I don't know whatever the currency was back then, per day, is what he was given as just for being Islamic. So this obviously, imagine the news comes out, Mashiach went converted to Islam. So this came as a very, very strong shock to a lot of the people. So many people, they refused to come to the sentence. They're like, no, it can't be. It doesn't make sense. There were actually hundreds of families that went and converted with him to Islam. So you think about it. It's Nathan of Gaza. What did he say? Nathan of Gaza is a guy who, no matter what Shabbatai Tzvi did, he proved it somehow that it was right and it was a tikkun and it was a great thing. This was not different. Nathan of Gaza says, what? You think this is a chas v'shalom? You're doubting the Mashiach? He says, you know why he's doing this? He says there's hidden nitzotzot, there's hidden sparks throughout all the empire, the Islamic empire. He is going and he is digging inside. He's taking it down from within. He's going in, in like a spy, and he's going in and he's going to take out all the sparks, and then he's going to go and he's going to, come, out and bring the whole world towards the Mashiach. So he says, how can you do this? He has taken upon himself the shame of being called a traitor for you. That's what this Nathan of Gaza goes and spreads out. So the the people, it's very difficult to come to the belief that you have been doing something wrong. And this is one of the reasons why it's very hard for Baal Tshuvas. People, especially younger Baal Tshuvas, it's easier. Okay, it's fine. But as you get older, 50, 60, 70, it's hard to be a Baal Tshuva because that means your whole life I was living a lie, I was living a fake, I was living a fraud, a phony. Unless you were one of those type of people that always knew that it was the truth, but you wanted to party. But generally speaking, it's very difficult because it's hard to convince that you're doing something wrong. These people, it's very difficult to convince that they were doing something wrong. So it came as a very, very strong shock to them. I'll tell you how bad it was. Imagine the Jews realized that Mashiach is coming. So what did they go to the Gentile neighbors that all bothered them and persecuted them and caused them problems throughout the year? I'd be like, hey, Tony, well, I don't know, it was Istanbul, Turkey. Muhammad, Fatima, come here. It says, remember all that stuff you're doing to me? Well, Mashiach is coming. You're getting paid back. Oh yeah, baby, it's payback time. And they would come and then all of a sudden, after all their going and bashing all the other people, all of a sudden, Mashiach is now Islam. What are you going to do? What you going to do now? So they got, besides all their hype that they lost it all. Unfortunately, many converted to Islam. There were also people that converted to Christianity. There was that's it, we're done. What are we supposed to do? There were also people, unfortunately, that committed suicide. So it really shook down the Jewish. Besides, you think about it. This is shortly we had a massacre. Then you had the Shabbatai Tzvi. It just kept the Jewish I guess spirit was really going down. So the rabbis, the way that they dealt with it after he converted was they were sort of kept it hush hush, let's forget about it, let's move on. So after that, after he converted to Islam, he went and he brought many people along with him, but he still sort of kept Judaism in a way. So he was outside, and this is the way that they kept it as well. Outside they were Islamic, but inside they kept Judaism. Although it was a little bit of a twisted Judaism, that they did some weird things that we're soon going to see. But he sort of had this mix of them. He, at the year about 1667, his wife Sarah gave birth to a son. He named him Yishmael Mordechai. At 1671, he divorced his wife while she was pregnant with his daughter, but then he remarries her shortly afterwards. I think he was even thinking about marrying somebody else in between it, whatever. Then he ended up marrying her afterwards. After a while, though, that the Turkish government sees that he's like Islam, but he's acting Jewish. He's doing all these things that they stopped paying him all that the salary that he was giving him when he was discovered that he was saying Tehillim with the Jews. A short while after that, his wife Sarah died. I think she died around the age of 35. And after that, he went and he remarried a woman by the name of Esther. And she was a daughter of one of his rabbis that followed him. That was his followers. And about what was the year that we said? 1676, I think we said, was when he passed away. He passed away about 6 weeks before he passed away. He goes and he asks for the nearby Jewish community to send him a Jewish prayer book for the high holidays. And who knows what he did with that? But he went and after when he was about 50 years old, he went and he died. I don't know if he went and died, he just died. But why do I say he went and he died? Because what is Nathan of Gaza now going to say? Because people still had his followers. This is years afterwards. Nathan of Gaza, so people go over to him and be like, what happened? The Mashiach died. He says, no, come on. This is it. The death was nearly it was a mirage of something. He's actually ascending to the other world, and then he's going to come back, and then he basically convinced them also somehow that it's not over yet. Nathan of Gaza died about 4 years after Shabbatai Tzvi. So the Shabbatai Tzvi didn't die after that. They actually, and in fact, it's still in existence today. You don't hear about it that often, but there are people called the Dunmeh, if I'm pronouncing it right. These are otherwise known as voluntary Moranos. What they did was there are people that outside look like Muslim, but they practice some Jewish ideas still, and they'll have different things. Either some of them is heresy in Judaism that they practice from Shabbatai Tzvi, but some of them are legit Judaism. So they practice outside Muslim, and inside they're like Sheptinians. They're waiting for the Shabbatai Tzvi to come back again as the Mashiach. So most of the people actually came back to the Jewish fold. This wasn't the majority of them, but there were people that stuck to it. And they say nowadays, and the estimates vary, it varies big time, and this is in Turkey, where they would be, you're looking anywhere between 4,000 to 100,000 of these type of people that are in existence today. So even though now people are becoming very secular. That's generally the the way that even look at the Christianity, it's more of a secular path. So also these people are also becoming more secular. But you still have these people that follow these weird ideologies. For example, they will go pray by the ocean, similar to, because on Shabbatai you go a lot of swimming in the ocean. So they would do a lot of things that are either Jewish in a sense or Shabbatinian in a sense. But outside they would look completely Muslim. So they have this mixed thing. The after effect of this had on the Jewish nation was actually very severe, because now any Jewish young guy that started speaking Kabbalah, people were like, oh no, this is another one. They just banned it right away. And there are righteous people that got stuck under this, heat because of that. Of the, two very famous ones, one of them was Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, and Rav Yonasan Eibshitz, that they were, each, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, he was, we have this Sfarim now. We learn his Sfarim. But he got persecuted his entire life because he was preaching these things when he was younger. Because people were afraid that this is just another, Shabbatai Tzvi that's happening. Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz, the reason why he got a lot of heat was because he wrote a kameh for somebody, and in there one of the other rabbis thought that there's something that's related to something that's Shabbatinian, and they also got a lot of heat. So a lot of rabbis took a lot of heat from him afterwards because they were teaching either mystical things or something along those lines. Anything that resembled something that had to do with Shabbatai, they were just like, we can't. The Jewish nation can't handle it. So they went all out against it. This actually opened up, though, the floor for the Baal Shem Tov, for Chassidut to come into play. And shortly after that's when the Baal Shem Tov came, and where the Chassidut came into play, that basically showing that you could have a connection, because everyone was depressed, we're down. So this was the Chassidut teaches that you have to be connected to Hashem with joy and happiness, and there's a personal connection. So this is where the Baal Shem Tov came in to sort of rejuvenate all the spirits that were down. Interesting, I want to end off. This is what happened after Shabbatai Tzvi died. And this is actually a lot after what happened after he died. This is, we're going to end off with this final segment. This is his possession. He possessed somebody, this Shabbatai Tzvi, and we're going to speak about it. If you want to look it up, the source for this is the Minchat Yehuda. It's written by Rabbi Yehuda Fataya, which was his, I want to do it at one point in time. I don't know if we'll get around to it or not. I haven't decided it. I have this class already prepared for years already. I just never gave it. It's a class on possession, exorcism, dibukim, things like that. So he was the specialist for dibukim. He lived in Baghdad in the late 1800s, early 1900s, in the same time as the Ben Ish Chai, and he was a very, very big Talmid Chacham, tzaddik, a Kabbalist, and his focus, he had a very, very strong, and he has a whole part of his Sefel that speaks about the stories that he dealt with dealing with exercising these spirits. Nowadays, the Chafetz Chaim says that there's no real spirits. This is there's not going to be any more exorcism anymore until Mashiach comes. But this is before the Chafetz Chaim even came to being, when possession was still in existence. So. The spirit of Shabbatai Tzvi. So there was once a boy, his name was Ezra, and he was a yeshiva boy. He would sit and he would learn Torah. And it sort of happened that after, as he got older, he sort of, got into this daze, and he started imagining somebody else's life. He actually started picturing a sort of not like a dream, but it was actually like he was really there. Like one time he was sitting over there. He was learning. He heard the birds chirping, whatever it is. He closed his eyes for a second, and all of a sudden he opens it up, and he hears like chains, dragging behind him, and he feels himself that he's chained, and he's walking, and then he hears someone screaming, keep on moving, and so he's like walking in chain, and then he starts speaking in a language that he doesn't understand, but then he does understand it, and he understands other people, but he doesn't know what he's speaking, and he's interacting, and he's sort of living his life through somebody else's eyes, and he sees like somebody's calling him, says, "Are you the Messiah?" And he says, "Yes, I am the Messiah." And he's talking, and he's talking with this very important, Islamic, figurehead, and then shortly after that, he leaves unchained, and he's sort of in this, daze. He's in this life. A short while after that, he wakes up. He wakes up and he's in his bedroom, in his dorm in yeshiva, and his friends. He goes over to his friends and says, "What happened? How did I get here?" He says, "We found you in the forest, just laying on the floor, and we tried to wake you up, and you wouldn't wake up. So we brought you here." So when the second that he woke up, he's like, "Where's Sarah?" And they're like, "Who's Sarah?" And then he's like, "What do you mean, who's Sarah? Where's Sarah?" And they're like, "You don't even know who's Sarah." And he couldn't. And it was a sort of like a dream. Like after, when you wake up from a dream, it's really real. And then after a while, you're sort of like, it's like, oh, it's just a dream. Like after a while, he was like, "Yeah, who was I asking for? Who's Sarah? I have no idea." So he kept on having these types of visions and seeing somebody else's life. At one point in time, he was in a state that he actually woke up. He was living somebody else's life. He was doing whatever that other person was doing. And when he came into being, I think one of his roommates came in and saw him. He was unclothed, wearing his talit and tefillin on him. And he just, he didn't even know how he got to it. So he was, and this kept on going so much so that it gets stronger. Instead of getting weaker, it got stronger. That he would go on dates with girls to potential, matches. That he would accidentally call his date Sarah, and they'll be like, "Who's Sarah?" And they'll go, or whatever. And obviously that would make the girls run. There was one girl that was really impressed with him, and she was like, "How is it so? Yeshiva bachur, you're good. You learn Torah. You're a big right. You're a good kid. Why are you not married anymore?" So he tells him, he says, he didn't even realize, he heard himself say this. He says, "Oh, I've been married all along." He says, she's like, "What?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I married the Sefer Torah." And she and obviously scared her off, and rightfully so. So he realized there was something going on with him. He actually went to big rabbis, and I think one of the rabbis went and sent it to the Ben Ish Chai. And the response back was, because he said, he's having certain things that were happening to him. I guess the rabbi, investigated a little bit, and the response back was it's too powerful. The time is not yet proper. Don't do anything because it's very dangerous. May God have mercy on this man. This is not something that's very nice to hear. So, but it was nothing that he could do. So 10 years go by. And the behavior got worse and worse. He started calling people by previous names that he remembered in his previous life, and he started having visions of being excommunicating, and then he had visions of converting to Islam, and even to a certain point, he suddenly had thoughts of he wanted to convert to Christianity, so like thoughts that came into his mind, or other unholy type of thoughts. So he decided that he's going to go see Rabbi Huda Fataya, which was the author of the Sefer that we're reading this from. So he goes and he says, he tells this rabbi, this Kabbalist, he says, for years I've been saying Kaddish or Kedusha, and evil thoughts are coming into my mind, as he says, as if somebody's speaking within his heart. So he said, did you ever do anything to it? He says, yeah, one rabbi once told him to write a mezuzah and wear it as like over his heart, like a necklace or whatever it was over there. He says, but it didn't help at all. So fine. So the rabbi, started, doing what he did to get out of these positions. And one of it's providing these, unifications, these tikkunim, and that is by, saying things into the person's ear that were, Kabbalistic nature to draw out the spirit, or to at least make him speak, or whatever it is. So as he's saying this unifications, these things, so suddenly this guy Ezra starts laughing. So he says, "Why are you laughing?" He says, "Because the guy, the spirit inside him was telling him." He said, he was, first of all, he said he's cursing you. He's telling the rabbi, he says, "The spirit inside me is cursing you," and he's saying, he says, "Your teacher, the Ben Ish Chai, didn't want to touch me." He says he wanted to stay for me, and you're going to go and you're going to be able to do it. You're going to come and touch me. So he didn't listen. The rabbi kept on doing the unifications, and he kept on cursing and swearing in the heart, but they paid no attention. Finally, the Ezra said, "Let me listen to what he wants to say." So he goes and he says, the spirit says, ask this rabbi what he wants from me. Why is he causing me so much problems? So the rabbi responded. He says, "I want to know what city are you from and what is your name." So the rabbi continued. He says, "And don't lie to me, because if you start up with me, I'm going to show you the might of my arm." This rabbi said. So the spirit said, the spirit answered. It says, many people like this rabbi wanted me to tell them my name, and they were entirely unsuccessful. He says, "Why? Because I'm stronger than a rock, and I never back down." So the rabbi says, "All right, let's see who prevails." And he goes and he continues doing the unifications, and he says, "I'm not going to stop until you tell me your name and where you're from." And the rabbi continues and says, "You're causing yourself this pain, not me." And he went and he did, certain Kabbalistic things with a shofar and, blowing it and saying these Kabbalistic things. And he continued until finally the spirit cried out and said, fine, I'll tell him my name. And, this is not the rabbi's first, time that he had to do this. He knew that these types of spirits these type of souls, they're like Paro. The second that they have a rest, they harden their heart already again. So, but he went and he said, the spirit said his name is David, the son of Shabbatai, the son of Rebekah from the city of Ismail. And what happened? He had forsaken his faith. He has been with a Gentile woman, left no children, and he said it's now has been 17 years since he's been inside this man Ezra. So he said to this man said to Ezra that actually when you read the story inside from the Minchat Yehuda, he calls him the name not only Ezra but he also calls him the name Bechol. But he says that whatever, it's the same person. So if you look inside, you'll see it as those two different names. So he goes to Ezra and he says, the spirit says, why are you causing this so much against me? He says, what did I do to you? Just let me be. I'm going to be in here. I'll be quiet. Don't bother me. I won't bother you. We'll live our own lives. So this Ezra said, listen, why don't you just go to Gehenom? Why are you sticking inside my body? Go to Gehenom. So he says, I can't. He says, I'm not able to go into Gehenom. Said the spirit, why? Because I've been with a Gentile woman. And he says, listen. He says, let's do it. Let's make a deal. He says, I'm not going to cause you any more harm. You don't go anymore to this rabbi, and we'll leave it like that. So this man told this rabbi, and he says, this is what the spirit told me. So the rabbi says, fine. The rabbi didn't want to. He had other stuff that he obviously needed to do, and he says, if this is going to happen, let's see. Let's try it. He knew this is not going to last, but he says, let's try it. It only lasted for a few days before the spirit again started whispering, into his heart, different things, different impurities that he should, of sins that he should do. So he came back to the rabbi, and the rabbi again went and he started again with the unifications. And he says, this time I want you to tell me your real name, and you should know. Said the rabbi, that I know your real name. An angel already told me your real name, so I'm not going to stop until you tell me your real name. So, and he continued the identification until the spirit got, nervous, and he says, fine, I'll tell you. And he says his name was Tzvi, and his mother's name was Rebekah, and he was from the city of Ismail. So the rabbi told him, says, tell me the truth. First you told me that you are David, the son of Shabbatai, and now you're telling me that you're Tzvi. The rabbi says, are you not then the famous Shabbatai Tzvi from the city of Izmir who pretended to be the Mashiach? And he said, yes, that is the truth. So the rabbi said, if so you've been dead, over 230 years. He says, what have you been doing for 230 years that you're still in this world? So the spirit says, go get a sheet of paper and a quill, and you want to start me telling you everything that I've been for the past 230 years. You don't have anything better to do. Maybe why don't you go learn? Aren't you late for the study hall? Says the spirit. So the rabbi says, you're right, I am. I got to go to the study hall. So he went to the study hall. He went and he saw the Rabbi Agassi over there, and he told him about Shabbatai Tzvi. And Rabbi Agassi also went and told the Ben Ish Chai. Both of them warned him. He says, you got to be careful with this spirit. This thing is very dangerous. You want to stay away from it. You have to be very, very careful with it. So when this Ezra came back to the rabbi for more unifications, he realized that he had to be very, very cautious. So he started speaking gently with the spirit, and he says, listen. He says, the rabbi says, why are you struggling with me? He says, do I want to take revenge on you? Did you do anything wrong to me? So the spirit said, you weren't even alive when I was around. So do you do anything to my father? He says, no, I don't even know your father, and neither your father was alive when I was there. So the rabbi goes and says, am I doing it then for payment? Is this this guy Shabbatai Tzvi, is the guy Ezra, is he going to pay me? So the spirit said, there's no way he's going to pay you. He doesn't have a red cent to his name. He doesn't have any money. So he says, why am I doing this? Because I have compassion for your soul. You're a part of God's soul, and I want to give you a tikkun. So he says, what is my crime that you constantly curse me and you constantly give me such headache with all these things? So the spirit says, because I can't bear these unifications. It's very, very painful. The rabbi responded, listen, this is the way of the world. You go to a doctor, you have a cut, a bruise, and you need some things. You need to get pain until you get healed. So he goes and the rabbi says, tell me. He says, don't you feel like after we do the unifications, you feel a little better? Don't you feel like the klipot that are surrounding you are going down a little bit? So after the rabbi talked to him in a very calm and relaxing way, the spirit answered. He says, the words of a wise man are gracious and worthy of a kiss. He says, I'm not going to conceal this from you, that even though the unifications are very, very painful for me, but I do feel that my skin has become softer and the cuts have begun to close. And the spirit says, I'm in agreement with your words. And And he says, let's continue with the unifications, the Spirit says. Let's do it. And he says, if I scream and if I cry and if I curse, don't pay attention to it, continue with the unifications. So the rabbi says, no, that's not going to be enough for me. I'm not going to be just here one-ended. You got to go and work on this on your end also. You got to come and try to break the klipot from within as well. So the Spirit said, fine. Okay, and let you be successful. And they went and they started doing unification, so much so to the extent that both of them were so exhausted afterwards that they couldn't even speak anymore. So they just sat in silence for a while till they gained their strength. The rabbi then asked him, he says, are you satisfied with all the unifications? So he praised them. Now the Spirit started praising him. And he says, I feel that the weight of the husk has been, the klipot has been lightened. So then the rabbi asked him, he says, how thick is the klipot? Klipa is a spiritual impurity that surrounds you. He says, how thick is your spiritual impurity? So the Spirit answered, he says, without exaggeration, it's 1 cubit thick. Can you imagine that's thickness of impurity that's just surrounding this soul? So the Rabbi Udaftai went and he asked him a few questions, and then he, the way that he wrote it and the way that I'm going to say it is, he just wrote the answers, and you can figure out the questions by then. So we're just going to list you all the things that he said about who this person was, who this soul was, which was obviously we know Shabbatai Tzvi. So this is what he said. He says, I am Shabbatai Tzvi. He died by strangulation. He did not repent, and he was buried in a Gentile cemetery. When he was alive, the klipot, the husks, would actually appear before his eyes. He was able to see them. The reason he became wicked was because he was not conceived in holiness. He was reincarnated in countless number of reincarnations. He also went on, and he obviously says, the Moshe Emet, the Torah Emet, he said that everything was true, but that doesn't make any difference because once you're dead, you're exempt from the Torah, as we see in Kamala and Shabbat, page 38. And he goes on, he says his reward for fulfilling the commandments was already credited to somebody else, to another righteous man. So he's not even getting reward for the stuff that he did from all the severity of all the sins that he did. He said also that the beginning of his downfall was when he sinned with a married woman. And he said also, which the rabbi also heard about it, but then he validated it, that he had relations with a male while wearing talit and tefillin. He also then went and he sent a young man to be with his own wife and told him, whatever my wife tells you to do, that's what you could do. So, this guy, serious amount of sins. He said the chibut hakeva, the beating of the grave, which is a very, very hard time for a soul, right after a soul dies, lasted for 12 years. And he said until now he's been reincarnated in all the beasts of the forest, and this is the first time he was able to go into a human being. Over 230 years. And he says the reason that he was able to go into this human being, like how did he have access to it, is because this particular person, he went and he using a clean tongue, he clean lashon, he went and he kissed the opposite gender, and because of that, he says it's been over 30 years since he's entered this person, and he says. He continues the Spirit, and it said he was condemned to be with JC in a certain area of Gehenom, which is in boiling feces, and for a certain part on a Friday day that he was supposed to. That's where he's supposed to be for part of his tikkun. And he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu went and he caused me to meet you, says the Spirit to this rabbi, so that you would merit to rectify me, because this was known. He was known as the one who was able to do all these things. And then the Spirit goes on and says, as for you, Ezra, or AKA also known as Bechol, he says, I want you to go, and the Spirit is telling him, you're going to go and you're going to recite Zohar daily. He gave him tikkunim. The Spirit says this is what you need to do. So much so that he actually went and he would wake him up early to pray. The Spirit would be like, hey, wake up from inside. Come, let's go into the synagogue to pray, because it would help him for his tikkunim. And Shabbatai Tzvi went and told him, he says, you should fear no more evil thoughts, but if you do have any more evil thoughts in your mind, remember this pasuk. And I'm going to give you, and he's going to say, I'm going to tell you 3 Kabbalistic names that you're supposed to think about in this pasuk. It's going to erase all your evil thoughts. And the pasuk is from Tehillim, chapter 45, verse 2. And it says, while you have that verse in your mind, while you say that, you think of the divine name Resh Chet Shin, as well as the divine name Kuf Resh Ayin and Sin Tet and Nun. That's what you're supposed to think about during those times, and the thoughts will be gone from your heart. And so the rabbi goes over to the Spirit and says, and how will I know? And how are you going to leave it? He says, don't worry. When I leave Ezra, I'm going to leave it without any fanfare. I'm going to go quietly. He says, and how will I know? He says, you'll know. You'll figure it out. And a few days later, he went and he kept it, and he checked him out, and he realized that there was no spirit anymore inside of him. There is a question that's asked, like what shaykhs did he have to do with JC? Like, why did this boy suddenly have thoughts to become into Christianity? As he converted to Islam, nothing to do with Christianity. So the rabbi answered, it says that the reason for that is because his life and JC's life was very parallel. They lined parallel. So that's why he was also ordained that he was going to be with him in a certain area in Gehenom as well. This also just reminds me, which I actually wanted to say in the beginning of the class, that I don't know if it confused a lot of people, because I'm getting some email, not really that much, regarding I spoke about, when I spoke about JC, how it's all fake, a phone, fraud, everything just nonsense. I brought up the idea that it's very even unlikely that he existed. And I brought proofs from all different various sources of why it's very likely that JC never actually existed. Now, the reason why I brought that was just to show you that if we're not sure if he existed, that means he didn't do much of a dent in those day and age. But it does appear that and I don't know if it came out wrong or if misconstrued, but I do believe that he did. My personal opinion is that he did exist, because we see some sources in the Kabbalah about him. In the Gemara there is a little bit of source also. So it's possible that he, very likely that he did exist. But the proof of bringing all that source, just to clarify, was not to show that no, he never existed, but to show that even if he did exist, if there's a doubt that he existed, it shows that how nobody cared about him. It was back then that nobody even did two thoughts on it. But anyways, that finishes our discussion on the fake Mashiach that we spoke about. So we spoke about JC, we spoke about Shabbatai Tzvi. This should give you an idea of what to look forward to B'ezrat Hashem when we meet and greet the new Mashiach very soon. Any questions?
There's still people that follow him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Follow him?
Yeah. It's usually people in Turkey, but not that many.
But those people that follow him, are they Jews? Because
now, if they would need conversion. Yeah. They would need a conversion, because listen, they lived as Muslim. Who knows if there was an intermarriage, and they didn't really keep a lot of the things, so they would still need to do a conversion. As far as my knowledge on it.
But how about the ones that converted back then, and then they converted back to Judaism?
No, because you cannot convert out of Judaism. Once you're a Jew, always a Jew. You could convert to every single religion. You're dying a Jew. You're born a Jew. You die a Jew. The only time when you're not a Jew is if you're not born a Jew, and that's when you have to convert. Yeah.
Mine's off topic.
So, the question is, what kind of miracles did he actually perform?
So it's hard to say, because there's a lot of just rumors that people say that he did. Real miracles, that is nothing. There's not.
Water.
No, none of those things. None of those things that And again, just like JC, that he has all his followers claim. Did anybody see it, that they actually did all these things? I mean, it could be that he got Kabbalistic, knowledge as well. So I wouldn't be shocked if he did it, but there was nothing here that he claimed he flew also. I mean, and nobody saw him because they weren't worthy of it. So, you don't need that to get followers. He got people that were able to. He was a very charismatic person. Was that good? So.
If a Jewish woman marries a goy and her kids are technically Jewish, but they baptize them, would they stop becoming Jewish after a certain generation? Like all
no.
Kids,
it would still be a Jew. If this, even though as long as it's mother by, it has to be from from the mother side. So you still have to be Jewish. And it's very interesting, because dealing with converts, there's many times when I speak to potential converts that it turns out that they have Jewish ancestry. And that's why they convert. Technically, you convert them just to be sure. If you're not sure, it can't hurt to do a conversion, because the last thing that you want. Imagine somebody who's a non-Jew goes and he thinks that he's Jewish, and he lives his whole life that he's a Jew. Meanwhile, he comes up to heaven and he's not even Jewish, and that he kept Shabbat was a problem. He gets punished for that. So yeah, a non-Jew cannot keep Shabbat.
And one question: did he leave some written works?
So Nathan from Gaza did. I don't know if Shabbatai Tzvi. He wasn't that. I don't know if he did. I think Nathan of Gaza did. I'm not sure. Yeah, it definitely wouldn't have it in any library now. It would be very I don't say blacklisted.
It was the same time with the Golden Vilna, right?
No, he came before. I think Golden Vilna was 1700s. No, he lived in the mid 16 to late 1600s. Any other questions? No? Chazak u'baruch.